You may have heard of fly fishing or even flying fish before, but have you ever seen tens of thousands flying down from the sky? This is just one of the many ways that slippery fish find themselves sequestered in far-flung places. This is how fish get into isolated lakes. Hi, I'm Tasha, and you're watching Animalogic. Today we're talking about how different species of fish all over the world end up in places they or even we never intended. There are lots of ways that fish can appear in isolated bodies of water. Some of these happen naturally, but most of these are caused by good old-fashioned human activities. One of the most common ways that fish naturally get into isolated locations is by being left behind when a stream or river that once connected a body of water dries up or changes course. Species can also end up isolated when a river floods and carries fish into a new body of water. That could also mean a literally brand new body of water. This is what happened about 12,000 years ago at the end of the Ice Age. As the glaciers retreated, they turned into water that flooded the land and created temporary rivers and, in some cases, new lakes. As the ice moved away, the earth rebounded or decompressed. This also created new lakes, sometimes in areas where there used to be ocean. Many of the saltwater fish that got trapped in lakes died out, but those who survived did by adapting quickly to life in fresh water. Today, floods are still the main way fish find themselves in new areas. An extreme example of this is the case of a water hazard at a landlocked golf course near Brisbane, Australia. After a flood in the late 90s, the nearby river brought half a dozen bull sharks into the water hazard on the 14th hole. Crazy! The fact that these sharks, which are usually saltwater fish, were even able to survive in a freshwater lake is entirely thanks to a special adaptation of this species. Bull sharks actually move back and forth between the freshwater habitats of rivers and the saltwater of the ocean, which is how they ended up in the nearby river to begin with. This adaptation is crucial for their survival, since they spend up to 5 years of their youth hiding from larger predators in freshwater rivers and estuaries. This ability to live in both fresh and saltwater is all thanks to their rectal glands, which are specialized to either store or get rid of salt. These glands make sure that the shark's internal salinity is always perfect, no matter what kind of water it's swimming in. Quick side note here, because bull sharks are amazing. Saltwater dehydrates you. It dehydrates fish too. So to keep the right balance in their bodies, they have to drink several times their own body weight in water every day, and their organs work extremely hard to filter out the salt. But fresh water hydrates you. So when you put a saltwater fish in fresh water, they get water intoxication. There's simply too much water in their bodies. Their cells get overfilled like water balloons and stop working properly. Their blood gets diluted and stops carrying enough concentrations of the necessary minerals for their nervous systems to work. Their kidneys get overwhelmed and eventually they die of osmotic shock. Bull sharks get around this problem by using their rectal gland. When they're in the ocean, it dumps excess salt, and when it's in fresh water, it shuts down, allowing them to live in estuaries and rivers like the Amazon, the Mississippi, and the river by the golf course. These bull sharks stayed in the golf course's freshwater lake for a whopping 17 years. As for the fates of the sharks, they haven't been spotted since 2015, and no one knows for sure what happened to them. Dun dun dun! But just as important as it is to know the fates of these golf-loving predators, it's crucial to know what happens to the animals closer to us. Our friend Danielle has a message for us.
Did you know that over 99% of farmed animals in the US are raised on factory farms? This means poor conditions for these animals and practices that harm our environment as well. Even if you're an occasional meat eater like I am, I'm sure you can agree that situations like these are unacceptable. So that got me thinking, what can we do about it? That's where the sponsor of today's video, FarmKind, comes in. They work with experts to research and vet charities that help factory farmed animals. Each dollar given goes directly to charities, who then help as many animals as they can. I love how FarmKind's website explains exactly how your donation goes to helping our furry friends. They calculate what kind of impact your money will have. Like, donating just $15 a month can help almost 350 animals a year. FarmKind has a compassion calculator to figure out how much you'd need to donate to offset your diet. I was able to input mine and see what my offset looks like. Looks like if I donated $18 a month, that would do more good than if I stopped buying animal products altogether. And because FarmKind is grant-funded, they won't take a cut out of your donation, meaning 100% of what you give goes straight to their recommended charities that are freeing millions of animals from cruelty and developing new food systems for a better future.
And if you'd like to donate even just a small amount, check out the link in the description, and if you use my code Animalogic, your donation will get a 50% boost from pledges by larger donors. So check them out. I'm sure you'll be impressed with the work they do.
Thanks, Danielle. And now back to the weird science of fish getting into strange lakes. To be honest, the fates of fish that end up in isolated lakes are pretty much always sealed. Drought conditions that dry up lakes are particularly dangerous for the fish that occupy them. In 2019, tens of thousands of fish were found dead on the banks of a drying up protected lake in northern Greece. Lake Koroneia, which used to be one of Greece's largest lakes, has recently lost more than 70% of its water in just a few years, killing off freshwater fish like carp, bleak, eel, and sunfish. Unprecedented summer heat, lack of rain, and draining of the lake for agriculture are responsible for levels of the lake dropping so drastically. Without huge coordinated efforts, the lake might dry up completely before we know it. And even if it doesn't fully dry up, just losing water can be a death sentence for many species. As the levels get lower, the sun warms it up. Warm water holds less oxygen, which means fish can suffocate in these shallow waters. But algae do love these conditions, so their populations explode. This kills the largest fish, and as they decompose, the bacteria uses up the last remaining oxygen available, and the lake becomes a dead zone, way before it fully dries up. It just goes to show us that sometimes the only way to save the fish trapped in isolated lakes is by human intervention. Long, dry summers in British Columbia, Canada, for example, have made the trek upriver to their spawning grounds nearly impossible for salmon. The drought had made the water levels just too low for fish to use fish ladders. They had no choice but to try swimming up the rapids, which was a losing battle. This made salmon pooling below the fish ladder in the thousands, unable to go upstream. The local community declared a full-on salmon emergency. Just imagine watching these beauties jump with all their fishy might, only to crash against the rocks and fall back down. But with nets, people shuttled 7,000 salmon up and over these rapids. I would totally sign up for that. Being a personal chauffeur service for a salmon? Yes, please. But the teams didn't stop there. They brought in massive sandbags by helicopter to build up water levels, and even an excavator to create a new salmon passage. This was a huge effort. Amazing job, Pacific Salmon Foundation and partners. But drastically changing the landscape isn't always in a species' best interest. While humans are responsible for saving the lives of fish, more often, we're the ones who can bring them into danger. In fact, almost 82% of all strandings are anthropogenic, or caused by humans. At least in the literature, the most common cause of fish strandings is hydropeaking, which is when pulses of water are released to increase the electric output of hydro dams. Another source of strandings is the waves created by ships in navigation channels in Europe. Damming in general can also be quite damning for fish. To address dwindling fish populations, humans have figured out interesting ways to replenish stocks. Back in the day, we used to load horses up with jugs of fish and trudge together to remote lakes. But today, we've booked a first-class ticket for these fish and sent them flying to their new home. If you happen to be standing near a hard-to-reach lake in Utah and something slimy smacks you in the head, watch out. It might be dozens of pounds of fish being dropped from an airplane in a practice called aerial fish stalking. In our province of Ontario, Canada alone, about 8 million fish are dropped from helicopters or trucked into lakes every single year. These are usually fry, the term for fish that are a few months old, or yearlings, which are around 18 months old. At just about the size of your thumb, they are the perfect size to be cradled by the air on their way down, which slows them down just enough to keep them safe before landing in their forever home. The main reason for stocking lakes is for recreational fishing. helping anglers to increase their chances of a catch. Stocking can also accommodate longer fishing seasons and higher catch limits. There's also a conservation aspect to stocking. It can reduce pressure on natural populations of fish so they aren't overexploited, rebuild depleted populations, or even reintroduce vanished species. There are some important issues with stocking too. The stocked fish are not genetically the same as the local fish and don't have the same necessary adaptations. They might not be viable or might consume the resources of the wild fish. If not done correctly, they can introduce diseases and pathogens. So stocking has to be done very carefully. It's not just simply shooting fish into any lake. In Ohio, to reintroduce species extinct to the area, they've built hatcheries on site that allow the fish to reproduce with little human intervention. Rubber-lined hatching ponds constructed at Olentangy River Wetland Research Park are a safe place for these species to propagate. When the fry are large enough, the fish are released into nearby lakes. Since this program began, a few of these species have made successful recoveries, including Iowa darters, lake chubsuckers, and black-nosed shiners. Sidebar, whoever made up those wacky fish names is kinda my person. Sometimes our human activities can cause fish to end up in places we never intended, like the case of the invasive Atlantic sea lamprey. These eel-like bony fish are native to Lake Ontario, which is the final lake in the chain of Great Lakes that serves as the outlet to the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence River. It wasn't until just over a century ago that sea lampreys gained access to the rest of the Great Lakes through a man-made blunder. Niagara Falls had previously acted as a natural barrier, keeping the Atlantic sea lamprey from accessing Lakes Erie, Huron, Michigan, and Superior. But suddenly, in 1921, they were spotted upriver in neighboring Lake Erie. Turns out that man-made Welland Canal, which bypasses Niagara Falls, was deepened 2 years before, allowing the lamprey to make their way into not just the rest of the Great Lakes, but many other connected bodies of water. The major problem with this is that lamprey are carnivorous and parasitic, destroying up to 40 pounds of fish each during their feeding period. To this day, every year, conservationists have an uphill battle to contain lamprey populations. But it's not just humans that accidentally carry fish to unexpected locations. Even other animals have the power to do that. Sometimes water birds will get fish stuck to their feathers and inadvertently carry them to isolated locations. But one extra unexpected way that fish can appear in isolated lakes is through duck poo. Recent research has shown that some fish eggs, which are an absolute duck delicacy, can actually make it through duck digestive systems completely unscathed. Crazy! This is a real feat, considering that fish eggs are relatively soft, and the first place food goes into a duck is its grinding gizzard before landing in a vat of stomach acid. Of the roughly 8,000 eggs which were fed to the ducks during the study, 18 came out intact on the other end between 1 to 4 hours after ingestion. Waterfowl like egrets and herons can also move fish eggs that get stuck to their legs and feathers. Or sometimes they might catch a fish, fly away with it, and accidentally drop it in a different body of water. Birds are clumsy like that. But ducks are kind of special because of how far they can move fish eggs. Considering that the average duck can fly around 80 kilometers an hour, these viable eggs could end up pooped out in lakes very far from where they were laid. The devil's hole pupfish is a species that lives in a water-filled canyon in Nevada's Death Valley National Park. This population has been isolated for about 10,000 years in a cave that's only 152 meters deep. While we still don't know for sure how the devil's hole pupfish ended up in their cave, we can't prove conclusively that they weren't pooped there by ducks. Just saying. The isolation of the devil's hole pupfish has resulted in a lot of inbreeding, like more than a royal family. There is so much inbreeding that when scientists sequenced the genomes of 8 individuals, they discovered something truly shocking. They shared about 58% of their genome with the other individuals. That's compared to just 10 to 30% in other non-landlocked pupfish species. The devil's hole pupfish is a great example of what can happen to isolated populations when they're forced to interbreed. A result of inbreeding is that genes that aren't useful in helping the species evolve still persist generation to generation. Genetic diversity is important in all species because it gives future generations the chance to better evolve to changing environmental conditions. Being landlocked in a bad gene pool doesn't leave much hope for the survival of the species. Those who do survive become hyper-specialized to this environment, but populations with small gene pools are less adaptable, and small changes can destroy them. As of 2025, there were only 38 of these blue cuties left. That's down from 191 just last year. This sudden drop in numbers was due to an earthquake, which caused waves in the cavern, sweeping away algae, organic materials, and even pupfish eggs. Geological events like landslides and earthquakes are another way fish can become isolated. An example of this was in 1964, when the largest ever recorded earthquake in North America struck southern Alaska. In minutes, islands in the Gulf of Alaska and Prince William Sound jutted into the air. Ponds developed on the islands where there was once marine habitat. One species, the three-spined stickleback, got stuck in these ponds, and the results have changed what we know about evolution. Researchers discovered that these stickleback populations evolved as much in 50 years as populations that were found from thousands of years ago. Like the bull shark, these fish are used to spending time in both salt and fresh water, which is why they were able to so quickly adapt to a permanent life in freshwater in their new landlocked homes. These isolated species can teach us so much about evolution because we're able to directly compare them to those that are free to roam. For humans, being in isolation is a known method of torture. For fish, too, it seems that nothing good comes from being cut off from the rest of larger groups and natural habitats. As we humans evolve our understanding of the ways we're causing harm to fish and other species with our anthropogenic activities, we can adapt our behavior to be more accommodating to our fishy friends. So, what should we talk about next? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for new videos every single week. Bye.